Thank you, FRAUKE. I think one of the most visible impacts for everyone in this room is you can feel the energy in the room, which is this. I told Johan earlier that maybe add another D to the event organization, which is depression. I think it has installed a sense of depression that even the people who are working on these topics are running on sort of reserve energy right now. And yes, there is a hype, enlargement hype, but I think we're now paying the cost of 10 years of EU basically having no enlargement, but more treating the Balkans as sort of more containment area rather than one where they're enlarging. So the impact is, I think, they've lost the youth in the sense of being a driver for this narrative. I've heard of research being done here. I think one of the researchers who is over there, I've overheard her once say that she did focus group with youths about the future of Kosovo, in which nobody even mentioned the EU once. So it's not a part of the vision. It's been eliminated as sort of a vision for the future, which I think is worrying because while there is a door being opened by the EU, suddenly there is kind of nobody sort of willing, to drive from this side. I think that's a huge problem. I think another problem is that the accession was supposed to be a peace irrelevant. This idea that we will be joining one day and then border things will not be an issue. Borders became an issue over the last decade. Security became a primary concern because of that, and because we're not feeling the accession hype, as you said, it's still security centered, the discourse. The whole country is now inward looking and looking at threats and prioritizing threats, amplifying threats. Because of this sense of insecurity that this lack of perspective is offering, and when you have that kind of a climate that is politically induced, politically promoted, basically, for example, in the case of Kosovo, if you look at the TV channels right now, every night, the whole line of argument between the parties is that you're working for Serbia, you're working for Serbia, you're working for Serbia. Everything is now this sort of proving a sense of patriotism and presenting the other side as a sort of existential threat. So this is the level of the debate. Nobody's talking about what we're losing from this focus on just security aspect of it and talking about the opportunities that this enlargement hype is offering. And that is having a detrimental effect on democracy because it's suppressing critical voices. If you say something along the kind of narrative that we're promoting here with KPDS, it's automatically labeled as, again, some sort of Serbian agenda, some sort of attempt to appease something. So I think, but one thing that provides some glimmer of hope is that what Albania is doing and what Montenegro is doing, it's followed here, especially Albania, and I think it might start to kind of trigger some thinking in people. But wait, maybe we're missing out on something because people see it. People see Albania on a regular basis, and this fear. I think we need to do a little bit of our fear mongering as well. I'm trying to fear monger Kosovars into the idea that in 4 years from now they might have a hard border with Albania, which is almost inexistent now. The enlargement hype, we're not feeling it. We're seeing it somewhere else. But we don't have, we've lost the strategic, as a society, the strategic vision about Europe because of political elites that want us to look inward. And I would not say political elites, I will not refrain from saying that the responsible side is, and at least in my view, the current acting government and the largest party. They have the primary responsibility for this. But then their energy is reflected in wider society in not seeing this bigger strategic picture.
Thank you, FRAUKE. So I think it's important to first see what this enlargement promises, because it's a bit more complex than we think, including due to the factors that AGON mentioned. So not only the candidate countries need to fulfill reforms and open and close all negotiation chapters, there's also the Council that needs to approve the accession protocol, meaning 27 EU member states. And we, of course, need to be fair and say that there is a positive momentum, hype, whatever you want to call it. And this is irrespectively of the fact that this round of enlargement is particularly different. The geopolitical and security imperative has now come at the forefront, and this is what we have been hearing from the EU leaders, and Commissioner Koss has really steadfast that this we need to enlarge now because the window of opportunity is open. And what we see from Brussels and other EU leaders, leaders from the EU member states, is actually that the momentum is quite favorable for the two mentioned candidate countries. So these are maybe two factors that play into the equation, but there is also one element that is out of the EU's control, out of the control of the candidate countries, and this is of course broader geopolitical context. Russian aggression against Ukraine, and this has been something that has pushed the enlargement talks back onto Brussels' agenda, mostly due to Ukraine, but Albania and Montenegro have used this opportunity. And I cannot emphasize enough how important the outcome of the Russians' war of aggression in Ukraine is, because it will in a way influence the EU's posture, the willingness actually to enlarge. And we are now in the midst of peace talks, so we do not know how it will end, but what we know is that even the candidate countries, if they fulfill their criteria, if they do their homework, there are other elements that really are important and that will have a final say whether they finally join the European Union or not. So geopolitical context, and I believe that yesterday it was mentioned during the dinner talks, I think we are all in a way very much busy with our everyday tasks and contexts in our respective countries or in the EU, in Brussels, for those who work in Brussels, but we really fail to see the importance of today's day, including for Albania and Montenegro. And then getting back to the question on regional stability, we have to be also honest and say that the regional stability is not dependent on the enlargement process as such. We do know that it's complementary because the EU enlargement has always, in a way, been other side of the coin. But when it comes to the core and the hardcore power, hard power and stability in the region, it was always NATO at the forefront since the 1990s. It was the United States as the main driver of regional stability and security, and the European Union enlargement and process served only as complementary. And of course, it's an indispensable part because there is no security without democracy, without stable institutions, without a functioning rule of law and good governance. And this is why both NATO and the EU worked hand in hand to actually ensure that we do live in a stable region. And then if you look at the parameters against which one can compare whether there will be any risk of instability or not, again, enlargement is not one of those, but it is a supplementary act. And this brings me to the point that I wanted to make, is that even if Albania and Montenegro do not succeed to join the European Union by 2027 or 2030, it does not mean that the region will
be back to Pristina after last year's KPDS. And let me preface this by saying that I'm coming today from a very different Serbia. Last year event took place in October. In the meantime, in Serbia, very radical changes took place. And it's a different Serbia, if I may say so, than it was last October. And within this framework, obviously, I think it's important to discuss to what extent Serbia can meddle in the internal affairs of the countries in the region. And obviously, Serbia has been at least from outside, observed as the country that is the key to the Western Balkan puzzle, if for nothing else, that for the potential to make troubles. And Montenegro comes on top of these countries, along with Republika Srpska and North Kosovo as well. So wherever there is significant Serbian majority or non-majority community. And we have knowledge already of how Serbia managed to interfere in the neighborly relations. For example, this took place mostly in very critical moments. For example, in Montenegro on the eve of joining NATO, when Dikic, among others, he was head of gendarmerie, was arrested for alleged terrorist attempts to commit coup d'etat in Montenegro on the verge of them joining NATO. 2017 in North Macedonia, at the time it was still Macedonia. There was, during the crisis, a Serbian intelligence officer was spotted in Sobrania, and there was this operation going on there to meddle in the internal affairs. So looking by the playbook of the Serbian meddling, it looks very much like Russian. So not kind of creating new crisis, but jumping on the existing one and kind of using these windows of opportunity to cause problems and meddle. And if my hypothesis is correct, the more the, let's say, regime foundation at home are being shaken, the less capacities or bandwidth there is to meddle in the regional affairs. And if we have, let's say, perfect storm of international development, which we have seen now with, for example, sanctions against Vladimir Putin, and now he kind of leaving the power, I could speculate, perhaps that now Serbian government or Serbian regime is less concerned about the Serbian world abroad, but more concerned about preserving the power base at home. Based on, for example, sources from BIA, which is Serbian intelligence agency, up to two-thirds of capacities are currently being used to keep SNS people towing the line, the official party line. So making sure that nobody kind of slips out, leaves the country, or gets in touch with investigative journalists, or not to keep this monolith kind of compact. So this is based on the official sources from the Security Intelligence Agency.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear that the focus is there.
It is.
Bad for you, but
definitely, because I guess everything that we talk about in Serbia now is how the situation is going to evolve. And obviously, we are all aware that the Serbian regime is a malign regime. It's the primary vessel of malign influence in the region, but also primary vessel of Russian influence. And again, Russian influence in Serbia. There are no active anti-Russian measures. We have Sputnik in Serbia. We have RT in Serbia, but these news outlets are not as bad as some Serbian outlets like Informer, Pink, or Happy. So even these Russian news outlets, they need to put a little bit of makeup on the cover of Russian propaganda. It looks better than, for example, Informer's front pages. So I think it's very important that what we're seeing now in the country. And then again, with what's going on, the question is what next? I think that the biggest change that has happened is that SNS and the regime are no longer the biggest political force in the country. Now it's the Serbian student movement with the, let's say, this kind of group of actors, which is very difficult to define. And obviously, this comes with a lot of risks for radicalization, ethnic tensions, and whatnot. But what we've seen in Serbia so far, not so much in relation to Kosovo, but specifically with the Bosniak or Muslim majority in Serbia, it has been very transformational. And I can maybe illustrate this by bringing two examples. One was a speech given by a war veteran of the 90s in front of the Serbian public broadcaster during the blockade of the RTS by the Serbian students, who gave this really emotional speech about how they were tricked by the previous regime, the Milosevic regime, and they committed atrocities in Bosnia, and they sent a message of peace, which is never, something like that never happened in the Serbian public. And the second one would be the relation within the student movement with Novi Pazar State University, which is, again, you probably know it's mostly populated by Muslim majority region in Serbia, where we had this interethnic kind of getting together that we've, again, never seen before. We had a veiled girl standing next to this is very iconic photography with a